She's a total failure. My mother said it loudly enough for the entire wedding table to hear. People laughed. My sister looked at me with a satisfied smile and added, "She can't even afford a proper gift for us." I sat there quietly, my hands folded beneath the table. What they didn't know was that the small black case hidden inside my handbag contained medication I needed every day because of an injury I had suffered overseas. They also didn't know why I had refused to spend thousands of dollars on a wedding gift. And most importantly, they had no idea who was sitting across the room watching everything. The groom's father, a retired 4-star general. He had been strangely quiet all evening, until his eyes landed on the military insignia attached to my bag. His face suddenly changed. He stood up. The laughter stopped. Then he pointed directly at me. "Wait," his voice shook. "I know that insignia." Everyone turned toward him. He looked at my mother, then at my sister, and finally back at me. Actually, he swallowed hard. "She's the commander who saved my life in Iraq. My name is Megan Carter, and I'm 34 years old." And that was the moment my family discovered that the woman they had spent years calling a failure had been carrying a story they never bothered to ask about. Growing up, I was always the strange one in my family. My younger sister, Rachel, was beautiful, outgoing, and naturally charming. My mother adored that. Rachel got compliments for everything. Her clothes, her grades, her friends, even the way she decorated her bedroom. I was different. I liked discipline. I liked responsibility. And from a young age, I wanted to serve in the military. My mother hated the idea. "You're too sensitive," she told me. "You'll never last." But I joined anyway. Years passed. I worked harder than I had ever imagined possible. Eventually, I became an officer and earned responsibilities I was proud of. Then came my deployment to Iraq. That deployment changed my life. During one operation, our unit came under serious pressure. I won't describe the details. What matters is that several people were trapped, communication was failing, and every second mattered. I made a decision. I took responsibility, and I helped get my people out safely. One of those people was a senior officer named David Reynolds. At the time, I didn't think much about it. To me, I had simply done my job. But David never forgot. Neither did the military. I returned home with an injury that required ongoing treatment. I learned to live with the pain. I learned to hide the medication. And I learned something else. My family didn't really want to know what had happened to me. When I came home, my mother barely asked about my service. Rachel only wanted to talk about her wedding. So, I stopped explaining. I became the quiet daughter. The difficult daughter. The one who was never successful enough. And somehow, that made them comfortable. When Rachel announced her engagement, my mother immediately called me. "You're going to help with the wedding, right?" I smiled. "Of course." I transferred money when they asked. I helped with planning. I even spent several weekends helping Rachel choose decorations. But when the wedding approached, my own health became difficult. My doctor had adjusted my treatment, and I needed medication regularly. I told my mother I might need to leave the reception early. She rolled her eyes. "Don't make this wedding about yourself." I didn't argue. I simply said, "I won't." Then came the issue of the wedding gift. Rachel wanted an expensive designer package. She had already mentioned it several times. One afternoon, she called me. "So, what are you getting us?" I laughed awkwardly. "I haven't decided yet."
She sighed.
"Megan, don't embarrass me." "Embarrass you?"
"Yes."
"Everyone is giving us something meaningful." I looked at the medical bill sitting beside me. I had recently paid for treatment and medication. My savings were lower than usual. "I'll give you something I can afford," I said. Rachel went silent. Then she laughed. "You always have an excuse." That sentence stayed with me. Not because it hurt, but because I suddenly realized something. They didn't want a gift. They wanted proof that I was finally worthy of being part of their family. And I wasn't going to buy that approval. So I chose a simple gift. Something useful. Something personal. And I went to the wedding with no idea that, before the night ended, my entire family would regret laughing at me. The reception was beautiful. Hundreds of guests filled the hall. Rachel looked stunning. Her new husband, Ethan, seemed genuinely happy. I was happy for them too. For a while, everything was peaceful. Then my mother noticed the gift I had brought. She opened it. Her smile disappeared. That's it. I quietly nodded. Rachel leaned over. Mom. My mother whispered something. Then they both laughed. I pretended not to hear. But they weren't finished. A few minutes later, my mother raised her voice. She really is a total failure. Several guests looked over. I froze. Rachel laughed. She can't even afford a proper gift for her own sister. Someone at the table chuckled. I looked down. My hands were shaking slightly. Not from embarrassment. From the medication I had taken earlier. I reached into my handbag and quietly touched the small black medical case. It reminded me to stay calm, to breathe, to remember who I was. My mother continued. You disappeared into the military, came back with nothing, and now you act like you're better than everyone. I looked at her. I never said that. Rachel leaned toward me.
You don't have to say it.
Everyone knows you think you're special. Then she pointed at my handbag. And what's with that ugly military bag? I closed my fingers around the strap. It's important to me. Rachel rolled her eyes. Of course it is. And then she said something that crossed a line. You spent years pretending to be some hero, but look at you now. The room seemed to become smaller. I could have responded. I could have defended myself. Instead, I stayed silent, because suddenly, I heard a chair scrape against the floor behind me. Someone was standing that I turned. An older man was staring at my bag. His face had gone completely pale. He walked toward me slowly. Where did you get that insignia? I looked at him. I'm sorry. He pointed toward the small military emblem attached to the side of my bag. That. I touched it. I earned it. He stopped breathing for a moment. Then he whispered my name. Megan. I stared at him. How do you know my name? He looked at Ethan. Then at Rachel. Then back at me. My God. His voice became louder. I've been trying to find you for years. The room went silent. My mother looked confused. What are you talking about? The man straightened. My name is David Reynolds. I already knew. My heart dropped, because I hadn't seen him since Iraq. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. You saved my life. Everyone stared. David continued. Years ago, I was trapped during an operation. Communication was failing. My team was trying to get us out, but we needed someone to coordinate the evacuation.
He pointed at me.
She took command. I lowered my eyes. General, I was doing my job. He shook his head.
No.
You were doing more than that. He turned toward the entire room. She kept people calm when everyone else was overwhelmed. She made the call that got my team out. And when I asked who she was, they told me her name was Megan Carter. Nobody laughed anymore. My mother's face had completely changed. David looked directly at her. And you called her a failure? Silence. He looked at Rachel. You mocked her because she didn't buy you an expensive gift? Rachel couldn't answer. David's voice became firm. You have no idea what this woman has sacrificed. David didn't exaggerate my achievements. He didn't turn me into some superhero. He simply told the truth. He explained that I had served honorably, that I had been injured during my service, that my medical treatment was ongoing, and that I had quietly carried those memories without demanding praise from anyone. My mother stared at me. You never told us. I looked at her. I tried. She shook her head. No, you didn't. I smiled sadly. Mom, when I came home, you asked me if I was going to help Rachel with her wedding. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Rachel suddenly looked uncomfortable. I didn't know about your injury. You never asked. That sentence hit harder than anything else. David stepped back. He didn't need to say another word. The truth was already standing in the middle of the room. Then Ethan, Rachel's new husband, walked toward me. Megan. I looked at him. I owe you an apology. You don't. Yes, I do. He glanced at Rachel. I heard what you said earlier, and I should have stopped it. Rachel looked down. For the first time that evening, she wasn't laughing. She was ashamed, and my family probably expected me to make a speech. They expected revenge. Maybe they thought I would embarrass them in front of everyone. But I didn't. That would have given them exactly what they wanted. Instead, I stood up. I took my handbag, and I placed the simple wedding gift in Rachel's hands. I brought this because I wanted to. Rachel looked at it, then at me. You don't have to accept it. She held it tightly. I want to. I nodded. Then I said something my mother never expected. I don't need you to understand my life anymore. Everyone became quiet. I spent years trying to prove I wasn't a disappointment. But tonight I realized something. I looked around the table. The problem was never that I wasn't enough. My voice remained calm. The problem was that I kept asking people who didn't value me to decide my worth. My mother started crying. Megan, I shook my head gently. I forgive you. She looked surprised. But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to keep standing in the same place while you tear me down. That was my real revenge. I wasn't going to destroy them. I was going to stop allowing them to destroy me. I left the reception before the final dance. Not because I was running away, because I was finally choosing myself. The next morning, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but I did.
She cried.
She apologized. She admitted she had spent years comparing me to Rachel because she believed success had to look glamorous. She said she had never understood what my military career had cost me. I was proud of Rachel because everyone could see what she achieved, she said. And I was wrong for not being proud of you. I appreciated the apology, but I didn't immediately return to the old relationship. That was important. An apology can open a door. It doesn't erase the damage overnight. Rachel called a few days later. She apologized too. She even returned the expensive wedding gift requests she had made from several relatives. I don't want people buying my approval anymore, she said. That was the first time I heard something from Rachel that sounded genuine. As for David, he stayed in touch.
Not as a hero for my past,
but as someone who understood a chapter of my life that my family never had. And Ethan? He became one of the few people in my family who actually asked questions. Not about my rank, not about medals, not about what I had accomplished. He simply asked, "How are you doing?" And sometimes, that's the question that matters most. Months later, I attended a small family dinner. It wasn't perfect. There were still awkward moments. Old habits don't disappear overnight. But something had changed. My mother no longer introduced me as the one who works in the military. She introduced me as her daughter. Just her daughter. And that was enough. Rachel sat beside me. Before dinner, she quietly said, "You know, I still feel terrible about what I said." I smiled. "You should." She laughed nervously. Then I laughed too. Not because what happened was funny, but because I finally felt free from it. Later that night, I opened my old military box. Inside were photographs, awards, letters, and a small insignia from my service. For years, I had kept those things hidden. I thought my family didn't care. Maybe they didn't. But I realized something important. I didn't need their approval to make those memories valuable. I knew what I had done. The people who served beside me knew. David knew. And most importantly, I knew the woman they called a failure had never failed. She had simply been measuring herself against people who were using the wrong ruler. That wedding taught me something I wish I had learned much earlier. Sometimes the people closest to you can make you feel like the smallest version of yourself. They can laugh at your struggles, ignore your sacrifices, compare you to others, and make you believe that your value depends on what you can buy, what title you have, or how impressive your life looks from the outside. But your worth doesn't come from any of that. It comes from the person you are when nobody is applauding. I didn't need to humiliate my mother. I didn't need to destroy Rachel's wedding. I didn't need revenge in the way they expected. The truth was enough. Because the most powerful moment that night wasn't when David revealed that I had saved his life. It was when I finally stopped trying to prove that my life mattered. I walked into that wedding carrying a small medical case, a simple gift, and years of memories nobody knew about. I walked out carrying something much more valuable.
Peace.
And if there's one thing I want you to remember, it's this.